Welcome to the Transmission Coaching Podcast, powered by ATRA. Today's podcast is sponsored by Gears Magazine, your magazine for the automatic transmission rebuilding industry. Be sure to get into Gears. Get your free subscription at gearsmagazine.com. Click on subscribe. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the Coaching Podcast. And now here's your host, Coach Lance Wiggins.
Welcome to the Transmission Coaching Podcast. It's a great day to fix transmissions. My name is Lance Wiggins. With me today again is my...
Again? You made that kind of sound like it was a bad thing.
It's never a bad thing. My perfect co-host, Vanessa Velasquez. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
How's it going?
Good. Have you ever been grounded? Do you even know what... Have you ever heard the word...
Grounded like to my room?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. When I was 16, that happened a lot. Have you ever heard of the word earthing?
Up until recently... I've kind of seen some headlines about the importance of earthing and a bunch of bare feet on dirt.
Yeah, something like that.
Am I going in the right direction?
Yeah, something like that. Matter of fact, a friend of mine who I've known for probably 8, 9, 10 years, I have never in my life seen him wear a pair of shoes. Not even on the hottest day of Ojai.
Really?
I remember asking him a few years back, because I was like, just my curiosity was, killing the cat here. But, what's the deal with the feet that look like somebody from Lord of the Rings?
I was trying to think of that.
What is that? It's not the trolls, but it's the little dudes.
No, the little dudes with the big feet.
Chris, what are they called?
Hobbits. Thank you, Chris, our IT guy.
Yeah. Engineer Chris.
Good for more than one thing.
Engineer Chris in the house, right?
Hobbit,
Phone
okay.
a friend. Yeah, he's got like these. These things
funny.
are just they look like shoes, right?
Mm.
But the man's never sick, like ever, He is.
There is something to say about exposing yourself to the elements, and that's what sometimes you gotta.
I think that's where this is heading. I mean, I saw recently, they have the copper fit, wear their copper fit bracelet, trademark hashtag copper fit. Wear the copper knee braces. You see Brett Favre on TV wearing the copper knee braces, and somebody else doing this copper thing. And, they're talking about the ions and how everything just circulates the blood and this kind of thing. You watch it on TV and you're like, whatever, no big deal. But recently I saw a 30-minute documentary on earthing, and I was somewhat intrigued by it. I am, afternoons I get home, maybe the flip-flops go on. I very rarely, have my feet to the floor, if you will, right? But recently I've started doing that. Like I'll walk outside, I'll get my feet out all up in the dirt, come out of the pool and just stand on the grass, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I had downloaded some information here. I want to read this to you because it's pretty interesting. It says the Earth is like a gigantic battery that contains a natural, subtle electric charge, a special kind of energy present into the ground. For safety and stability, most everything in the electrical world is connected to it, whether it is an electric power plant or your refrigerator. That's what the term grounded means. Being grounded also applies to people. When you are electrically grounded, you feel centered, solid, strong, balanced, less tense, less stressed. Mm-hmm. Overall, you feel good. If you have pain, you have less of it, or maybe none at all. When grounded, could decrease levels of inflammation, reduce stress levels, and improve circulation, that kind of thing. I found that interesting. Like, okay, I'm gonna try this for a couple weeks and just kind of see how this works. My feet are tender. I've got the tender feet. You walk outside, you're doing this thing, but just going out to the grass, which we have very few of at my house, but at the school we do, just going out there and standing there and walking on the grass for a while. And it reminded me also of watching this guy in the afternoons walking on my baseball field with no shoes on. He would walk the entire perimeter of the baseball field on the dirt and then go on the grass without shoes. And I thought, what is this guy doing? Right? Like, what are you cleaning my dirt here? And I think that it has to do obviously with this grounding issue. Now, granted, I haven't seen any miraculous results in it yet, but I don't know. Maybe the next week or so, I'll be able to do some sort of split or yoga. I don't think so. Yeah.
You never know. I mean, as listening to those statements that you read, it's it's something that we've heard before. It's nothing new. We know that it's important every once in a while to kind of embrace your natural surroundings, and it's very, very popular for those who wish to reduce their stress and tension and kind of clear your mind. So it's not surprising that that's something that a lot of people like to do.
I think throwing a cup of coffee across the room and breaking it, that relieves a lot of stress from me. I'm just saying.
That too. That's plan B.
So in our world, in the transmission world, and the reason why I kind of brought up the whole grounding issue is because we have seen issues with ground problems on import type vehicles that go back, to the 80s. You'd have torque converter and bushing blew, and you start with a leak, and then they'd pull the transmission apart and everything would be blue. And what's causing this? It's overheating. Fix it, put a bushing in it, put a stator support pump in it, maybe put a new torque converter in it, bolt it back up, drive it. Half an hour, 20 minutes later, pump's leaking again. Pull it back out, it's blued again. It must be a fluid issue. And so they start looking at fluid issues. All the while, it has nothing to do with that. It's actually arcing. It's actually electricity flowing through the converter and arcing onto the bushing, onto the Babbitt bushings. And this is what is actually plaguing our industry again. But this time it happens to be on the Ford trucks with the diesels. Similar to mine, it's a 2008 Ford F-250, excuse me, with a torque shift. They're removing the transmissions, building the transmissions, and the problem might be, soft 1-2 shift or something like that. Putting it back in the unit, drive it, spend about 10 minutes driving it. Next thing you know, 1-2 gear starts slipping a little bit, then overdrive slips, then the next thing you know, transmission's no working no longer. Pull it back in, disassemble it. The pump is blackened. It's like the blackest coffee you can see. Everything's destroyed in it. A lot of first time that you've seen this, you would think that it's a lack of fluid type issue, that it's a lack of pressure, but it's a grounded issue. And I relate that back to the earthing that we're talking about, being healthy. Transmission has to be healthy. It has to have proper grounds in it. And so I wanted to cover a couple things on the transmission side of it real quick. I did a video for the Gears Overdrive that should be out in the next couple of days here. Actually, I'd like to show this video now. Can we show it? Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gears Overdrive. My name is Lance Wiggins, Technical Director here at ATRA, and today we're going to talk about an article that I wrote in the August issue of Gears Magazine called Grounding. We have been dealing with a bunch of ground problems on torque shift transmissions for the Ford diesel transmissions, and it's not an uncommon thing, but there seems to be some misunderstanding about what to do and why it's happening. So one of the things that we're going to talk about here is ground. Ground, in the sense of the word, is to be stabilized and to be flat, to be in essence just part of the rock. Now you may have heard or seen, people who take walks without shoes, people that wear the copper bracelets. In some cases, there was I believe on the Discovery Channel, they showed somebody actually putting copper wire in their bed and then taking it outside and grounding it to the ground, and how the ions and how their body just felt so good. And this is very common for us as humans, but it's also very common for vehicles. We're going to talk specifically about how to install the transmission and make sure that you don't have any residual electricity running through the transmission that would cause the pump to fail. I'm talking about the pump failing within about 5 miles of a test drive, okay? Making sure that the battery cable is secured and clean, making sure that the bolts don't have any rust or residual debris on them, making sure 100% that your transmission case is not painted, making sure that when you put the transmission case up against the timing cover of the diesel transmission or the diesel motors, that there's a good fit, that it's clean. You even use a wire wheel against it. You use a wire wheel on the inside mating surface of the bell housing, as well as use a wire wheel on the bolt. We're going to show you some video here in a few seconds, and so just to kind of see some of the processes that we're doing. Hope you enjoy. All right, guys, we're dealing with the ground issues on the Ford torque shift transmission. This happens to be a 6.4 liter diesel. First thing we want to do is check our battery cables, make sure that our negative cable is connected correctly, our positive cables are connected correctly, and there's no corrosion around the areas. With any diesel, you usually have 2 batteries because the starter takes a lot of juice to run this thing. So it's important to just make sure that both the battery cables, both positive and negative, are free of any corrosion or any foreign substance on them. During a rebuild, make sure that you do not paint the transmission. We don't want any paint on the transmission. We don't want anything that may cause a bolt not to mate the surface of the engine. This would cause some resistance, and obviously we won't have a good ground, which is exactly what we need, which is causing the problem. It may be necessary to once the bolts are removed, to take them to a wire wheel to clean up any residual that might be on the bolt itself. Make sure your torque is correct as well. Well, there you have it. Hopefully some of those processes will help you continue to keep those transmissions out the door and make you more profitable. From Gears Overdrive, my name is Lance Wiggins. Thank you for watching. Cool. So in the video, we kind of point out a few things, mainly not having the case painted, making sure that the bolts, when we remove the bolts, that we put them on a wire wheel, get that handled. Make sure that they're torqued properly. Make sure that if you did have any ground issues, there's a couple of ways that we can test it. First thing you're going to do, we're going to look at check the Gears article for August 2018. That's going to show you how to check your ground from your case to the transmission. But we're going to hook our meter up, test our ground, put our positive on the ground side, put the negative on the transmission. Turn the key on. We want to see less than a tenth of a volt. And then when we start it up, same thing, less than a tenth of a volt. When it's running, less than a tenth of a volt. If the transmission's painted, it's similar to to putting sunscreen on, I guess. You put sunscreen on and you don't get burnt. Well, you have this coating, this paint coating over it, which doesn't allow it to adhere to the other metals. And so without a proper ground, without all the metals getting grounded to the frame, which is grounded by the negative battery cable, you have what's called residual electricity. And that residual electricity, what it does is it's like, electricity and water are very similar. It finds least path of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever walked by somebody after putting your feet on the ground, give them the old sparkaroo, or get the balloon, go in your hair, stick it up, right? You can stand there and not touch anybody and nothing happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the second you get close to something that's metal, a metal object, a door handle, a car door,
mm-hmm.
a person,
mm-hmm.
As soon as there's some form of ground, right, it finds the
mm-hmm.
path, whoosh,
mm-hmm.
and it snaps itself and it discharges.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens in the transmission is as that electricity is flowing, it actually creates an arcing effect inside the pump and where the converter is. That's just the easiest spot to go. Sometimes you'll see it at the back of the transmission, but for the most part, the majority of the time happens right there at the pump. So we talked a little bit about in the video about the bolts. We talked about the ground cables and ground straps to make sure that those are connected properly and don't have any corrosion or battery stuff on them. And it kind of triggered back to this article that I wrote on earth, or that I found on earthing, and how the two were very, very similar with regards to the health of the vehicle and the health of yourself.
Yeah.
Almost
like a reboot. It's like a reboot.
Like a reboot. Almost reminds me of remember how Randall Schrader used to write, what was his Doctor?
Uh-huh.
My patient is dying. But that's what that is.
Yeah. Interesting.
How do you find yourself getting dragged down by the day-to-day? Have you ever tried grounding?
Well, Lance, how much time do we have?
I know, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you always have to, you can get easily overwhelmed and wrapped up with the day-to-day. And, you start thinking of also what you have to do tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day. And look, that's just never going to go away. I mean, that's just life. You've got things to do. And so if you don't force yourself to make the time to ground yourself, to listen to what your body needs, and
other than beer.
Well, maybe if the beer is next to like a pool and you're just relaxing. See, so there's a way. It's just one of those things that, and it's very interesting, like you said, that how it goes across to automotive, and how it's just it's the well-being really of
the well-being of the vehicle,
of the machine. And you can look at your body as a machine, obviously. It is.
Mine's more like a tractor. More like a bus. Here's a couple of if you're interested, here's a couple of interesting articles that were written. Let's see. Grounding after moderate eccentric contractions reduces muscle damage. That's deep. The effects of grounding, earthing, on inflammation, the immune response, wound healing, and prevention and treatment of chronic inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. That's getting down to the. I mean, that's got to be heavy.
It is. No, it's fascinating. It kind of reminds you that we are these complex creatures, and it's, to me, what I get from that is that you. Okay, I'm going to get deep here. Your both your body, and the earth they're connected, and they kind of feed off each other. It sounds like
kind of like. Did you see that?
What?
I did the dentist right there.
Oh,
my bad. Kind of like Avatar with the
yes,
tree, right?
Yes.
Exactly. The effect of grounding on the human body on mood.
Yeah, mood, beer next
to
the pool.
You always feel better, I think, sitting or laying underneath a shade tree while the wind's blowing.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. And actually, I was just thinking, too, right before the podcast, when I mentioned last time how we came back from camping. There's, camping is just something, it's a popular activity, but there's still plenty of people that don't get it, and I would rather not be there. And some people that don't understand, I'm packing all this stuff to sit outside, like, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And believe me, you'll love it, type of thing. So
camp, depending on the type of camping you're doing, if you're backpacking and camping,
oh, that's different. That's work.
That's cool. No, see, I like that. I don't like taking tents to a campground. I'd rather backpack and camp someplace than take a tent to. If I'm going to go to a campground, the trailer's going.
Not having like a site picked out and not worry about where my next meal is going to come from would like really make me anxious. So that would not relax me so much. But I know a lot of people that do it and love it, and that's awesome. I would be I would just bring everybody down.
We're going to the Owens River then. How's that? You know, bring everybody down. That'd be perfect. Well, that'll about wrap it up here for the Transmission Coaching Podcast. It's a great day to fix transmissions, so let's keep fixing transmissions together. Till next time.
Later.